a week. Right, muckers. Now this is probably a video that most of you won't want to watch, especially if you've come here to see, some of the tractor stuff or the matadors. I'll catch you on the next one. All right. For those of you that have followed my channel for a long time, this is a video that so many of you, whenever I bump into you at a show or something, or I get messages that people have wanted me to do. And the truth is, I find it hard to talk about, and I find it hard to even think about sometimes. And so okay, look, this is about the dogs, and I don't know why I find, look, I've had no end of dogs, over the years. I've lost a lot of dogs, and those of you that have gone through that, you know what it's like. But I can talk about them. I can talk about all of them. But there's one dog that I struggle to talk about, even think about. But he's the dog that probably explains better than any dog why I do what I do for the collies, for the collie rescue. And as you know, at the moment we are raffling off that little Fordson Dexter, and that's coming to a close soon in the next few days. And as I said, the profits from that will go to doing something to help the collies and the rescue. Back to the subject of today's video, which is Bailey. Bailey even had a little book written about him, and that book's available. So it's an incredible book. But most of you don't know who Bailey is, and those of you that, as I said, have heard of him, wanted me to explain to everybody else. This video's not going to be like I normally do a video, because, as I said, I'm not going to be able to just go through it like I normally do and talk to the camera and just do it. I'm going to have to stop, get things reset and go again. So it's going to be a bit jumpy, put together, stuck together, whatever, but you'll have to just bear with it. But I want to tell you all about Bailey, because I think that'll explain why the collies are so important to me. Let's go back to the 30th of October 2019. Okay, so coming up to 4 years ago. And this is in, I think, Lancashire, I was told, sort of on the sort of open countryside and moorland and whatever. Somebody was walking and came across what they thought was the carcass of an old dead sheep. But on closer inspection, they saw it was actually just breathing. And on even closer inspection, they saw that it wasn't a sheep at all. It was in fact an old sort of collie dog. And they didn't just abandon it. They scooped it up, and they took it to, I think it was Pikemore Vets, who got straight to work. Despite the chances of this thing even, being able to continue through the night, they did all they could. They did everything they could. And so they did all the checks and everything on him, and they had basically established this old dog, probably 14, 15, something like that, maybe 16. Had no collar or anything like that. And by the state of it, they thought, quite rightly, that it had probably been fending for itself for weeks, possibly even a few months, until it got to the state it was just too weak to survive, and as I said, it just collapsed and laid there in the mud and water. Basically, I doubt it would have sinned through that night had that person not found him. So they did everything they could and cleaned him down, checked him over, try to get some food and fluids into him. You can't rush these sort of things when something's in that sort of situation. And he survived the night. Basically, they got him to the point that he was able to stand on his own feet and shuffle about. They did an incredible job. I mean, that, as I said, that dog was destined to go that night. But so a couple of 3 days later, after checking him over, try to just build him up slowly, clean him, and his eyes are all infected. Cleaned his eyes and everything, and got all this mass of just old bramble and mud and everything out of his coat. Just cleaned him all up and whatever. Because as I said, he just, to the point where he'd been laid out in this wet mud for so long, it actually stained his skin. There's a sort of a red, sort of a reddish sort of mud in that area, and it actually been laid down so long it just stained his skin. But anyway, the legal situation with this is obviously you've got to check for a microchip, which he was microchipped, and that should give you an address to the owner. They contacted the address, and it was an engineering firm who'd never known anything about a dog. Why register a dog to an engineering firm? This is where everything comes, sort of falls into place. Now, we don't know the actual facts, but listen, I've been involved doing this long enough to know these situations and how they come about. And I would have good money on it that the dog was probably cared for and loved, by an older couple or an older person who passed away. And as often happens in this case, I would imagine the son and his wife, or the daughter and her husband, were told, sort out your parents. Let's just say it's the old man that had died, sort out your dad's stuff and all that, and the will and all that. Well, what are we going to do about the dog? Well, I don't want the dog. Well, his dad's, he thought the world of that dog. Well, I don't want a dog. We can't have a dog. Whatever situation, Well, what can we do? Well, he's old anyway, and we couldn't do it. He's not going to go on that much longer, so, we'll have him put to sleep. Now, either the son or the daughter, the husband or the wife, still felt enough for the dog, and knowing what it meant to its owner, their parent, they didn't and couldn't face doing that. So what they did is, in their eyes, the kindest thing, which is to take it out for a walk in the middle of nowhere one evening or early one morning and just let it go, in the hope that somebody will find it. It might, just find a new home or something. That's what they tell themselves. The reality is they know what's going to happen. It'll just eventually starve and die, which is basically what happened. And the point, of the microchip being registered to basically a non-address tells you that it's actually gone. It's not just by accident. They knew what they were doing. They didn't want any comeback from that dog if it was found or anything. That aside, he ended up at the vets and they microchipped him. No owner. Now, as much as like the vet nurse said, "Oh, I'll take him home," and this is with any dog or cat or anything, you can't just do it legally. You cannot just take one home. It has to be done through a legal process, and one of those processes, it can be signed over to a registered charity. They then can actually join in the process, so the vet nurse could actually apply to take the dog. But with Bailey, and that was the name that they gave him, because as I said, there was no tag or anything, but Bailey was his name they gave him. They said that even if he can just, have his last few days, because they thought he would probably last a few days, maybe a week, but he couldn't stay at the vets. So they reached out, and this is where I first heard about him, and I was sent a message through Lynn with the collies to say, look, we've got this dog coming in and we wonder if we can do anything about it. Doesn't look good. And they showed me the pictures of him. They showed me the pictures of him, and I said we'll do whatever we could do. what, until everything's set up with the charity, as far as registration and that goes, whatever he wants, let him have it, and I'll sort it. Now, with younger dogs, obviously, you can go through the process of fostering and adopting them and whatever, and rehoming them. With a dog that's got basically a few days to live, no one's going to take on that responsibility. Or you'd think that, but this is where Carolyn came in. She's an extraordinary person who will actually do that. She will give a dog its last few days or weeks in a comfortable home. And she agreed to take Bailey on. Paperwork was sorted and signed over to the charity. So Bailey actually belonged to Protecting Pre-Loved Border Collies officially. So he had an owner again, and then he could be fostered by Caroline. So Caroline had about half a dozen other old dogs, various types, spaniels and border collies and Old Labradors and all sorts. She just loves dogs, and that's where Bailey went. And the first night he was there, he had a lovely big soft bed with all the other dogs, and I think he just felt relaxed and safe, and that he belonged. And he slept, had a really good sleep. He was exhausted, I think, with everything that had been going on for the past weeks and months, and with the vets and everything. And he slept. And the next morning, he was very frail and thin, but he got up, and Caroline tried various bits of food, but she thinks nothing of just giving a dog, well, that's just dog food. No, she'll give the dogs what they want. It turned out that Bailey liked egg custard. So that was his favourite, and Caroline made him egg custard. And he wolfed that down, and yeah. And over the next few days, he seemed to gain a bit more strength. And the days became a week. And that week then rolled into a second week. And he had one or two issues still. He fell ill again. Caroline just got the vet, and they did what they did, and just put him on this antibiotic and stuff like that. And he got a bit better, a bit stronger. And then, these went into the next week, and that weekend obviously went from sort of November into December. Come Christmas time, Bailey was still there, still having his egg custard and playing with the other dogs. And then winter went, and spring came, and the daffodils came out, and the flowers came out, and Bailey went for walks and played, and was putting on weight because he did like his egg custards. And then the summer came, and Bailey was still there. And he had his ups and downs. He had times where his old legs wouldn't do what he wanted them to do, and he like us all, there's better days than some, and but he was part of the family. And at night he would come in, been playing in the garden, gone for walks, playing with his ball, playing with the other dogs, and he would come in, and sometimes he would have nightmares. He'd be kicking and whimpering and stuff, because you don't know what maybe the previous sort of 14, 15 years, whatever he'd had, but that just those months, weeks and months out on open countryside, on the moorland and that, you don't know what it's like for him. Then autumn came, and Bailey was still loving life with his family. Now he was at home with his family, and then winter came, and it got to the 30th of October, and Bailey had been around for a year. From that point, he was found just matted and covered in mud in the middle of nowhere. And then he'd been getting weaker in the sort of last few weeks, and we'd all discussed that Caroline would know when the right time was for Bailey, and she said he'd let her know. And eventually, on the 12th of November 2020, over a year since he'd been found, Bailey was tired and he'd had enough. And then he went to sleep. Now, within the first few weeks of Bailey being found and going to Caroline's, I went round there and spent some time with Bailey. That was a good afternoon, actually, and just something about him, and he just wanted to sort of cuddle up, and it was almost like he wanted to just thank you for what you'd done and what everybody else had done for him. And then towards the end, when we knew that this was probably the time, I went back again and saw him. I sat down with him in the garden and fed him some biscuits. And he was, at this point, he was too tired to stand up for very long. But I went and said goodbye. Anyway, yes. So there we are. That's the story about Bailey. As I said, sorry I couldn't do it all in one go, but it is what it is. But for me, Bailey is the perfect example of why we do what we do with the dogs. As I said, there's a dog that was just left and literally was probably that was his last evening, and just by the thought and care of somebody that he's not just going to walk on by, Bailey had over another year, and probably the best year of his life. Probably without a doubt, I'd say the best years of his life was that last year, with all the dogs and Caroline and walks and flowers and egg custards and stuff like that, you see. So that's the reason, as I said, that I do what I do. That's the reason that Dexter is up for being raffled. And I'd like to thank everybody so far that supported us with that. As I said, I did it so that everyone could join. I did it so the tickets were just $5. And I know a lot of people have bought multiple tickets. And I know a lot of you out there don't even want the Dexter, but you said it's not about that. It's about supporting the charities, supporting, dogs like Bailey. Even guys in the States and overseas and everything, you all supported us as well. And a lot of you, you're not going to, if you won the Dexter, this is why I did a cash alternative. There's £1,000 cash alternative. And there's only about a week now to go before the raffle's drawn. So if you haven't got tickets already or you want to get some more, please, feel free to do so, because hopefully know a bit more about what good it does, the money you can do. And as long as there's people like Lynn and Caroline about, and the network of other fosters and that, at least they got a safety net, and maybe they won't end up out upon the moors like Bailey did. But yeah, that's why we're doing it. So there we are. I've finally told the story of Bailey. Not in one go, but I told the story. And yeah, I'm glad it's over. I didn't, something as I said, I wanted to film it. I can't film it. I just, even now I can't really think too much about it. But anyway, and I don't know why. That's the daft thing. As I said, I can tell you all about my other dogs and stuff. I don't know why. Anyway. So there we go. You liked Bailey, didn't you? You met him, didn't you? Until the next one, muckers, and thank you. Do well.